Okay, for dipping or pouring glaze over a pot, we're going to get into that. I'm going to do a little demonstration for you. I've got this piece right here, which I'm going to dip in. I also have this piece here and this one. So these two pieces have had slip brushed on. This one is a white, black, and a red slip. This is all brushwork. This little bowl had black slip brushed over the whole thing, and then the design in there has been scraped away when the bowl was still greenware. This is called sgraffito. The little sgraffito tool was used, and those intricate designs were carved through the slip. And that the lighter section is the raw clay. So with just a clear glaze over this, that's going to come through nicely, and this decoration is going to come through as well. This one I'm going to dip into a blue glaze. All right, so I have a 5-gallon bucket. This is a blue glaze. It's labeled on the top. It's labeled on the side, so you can see what glaze it is. With the buckets, you sometimes have to pull up each side individually. Sometimes it also works to go opposite. And each little tab, you have to kind of unstick until you can remove the lid. In this studio, each bucket has a ladle in it, and you use that to stir the glaze up, mix it so it becomes homogeneous, because as it will settle, there's there's stuff in the glaze, and there's water, so the water will stay where it is, and all the stuff will kind of settle out, creating more liquid on the top and thicker on the bottom. So you want to mix that all up and make it nice and homogeneous. Let's see if I can give you a better view of this. So making sure it's all and you can kind of feel it moving pretty well. There's this little hook so that the lid is and the hook there are glazing tongs, and you can use them to grab a pot. They're cleverly designed to grab the inside and the outside like that, and you don't have to on the pot when you glaze it. You don't have to. You could also glaze it blue. You could just use your hands, but since for this guy, I want to use tongs. I'm gonna do it a different way. You could use tongs and dip it. I'm gonna hold this one like that by the bottom and just dip it up to my fingers. I'm not gonna dip it any more than that. But how do you get the inside? If you want the same stuff on the inside, this is what you can do. So I got my glaze all stirred. I'm gonna take a scoop of that glaze and pour it inside, and then rotate it around. There was a little drip. But I'm rotate around so that it gets all the way to the rim, and then when I pour it out, I'm gonna twist the pot a little bit, hold it by the bottom, dip it in, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'm gonna pull it out. And there are little drops that form. I'm not sure if you can see that well on the camera, but I like to rotate it like this so that little droplet will go around the rim, and the water from that glaze is soaking into the pores of the clay itself. And you can see that it changes. It looks kind of chalky and dry right now, which is how it's supposed to look. But as it soaks in pretty quickly, so it dries pretty quickly. So that's basically done. Set it on the table. And then let it sit there a little bit, and then I'm going to clean up the bottom with a sponge so there's nothing on the bottom. At this point, it's nice and chalky, pretty good to touch. I do notice there's one little spot in there. Not to worry, I can just take a little brush and touch up that little section. So the idea of the glaze is that if it's an even coating, it should be a certain thickness. You saw me count to 5. That's just giving the glaze time to soak and attach itself to the pot. You can try dipping it. You can do like a quick dip and then a double dip. You can hold it there for a little longer. 5 seconds maybe enough. If you want, you can do another little dip. Just for fun, I'll do a second dip, but not all the way, and it'll be a little quicker. It'll also show you the difference between the wet and the dry. So you can see the wet and the dry layers, and it'll soak in pretty quickly. When it is soaked in and it is dry and all chalky, you can use a damp sponge, and I have my bowl of water. Use that slightly damp sponge. And I want to clean up that little drip that happens. So I'm just going to take this damp sponge and go around like that. Just back and forth, the same way that you would clean up any little cosmetic things on your pot. So that way it's a nice clean edge. It should always be, the glaze should never come down to the bottom, because then it could spill over onto the kiln shelf and wreck everything. So that's a nice clean bottom. There's a nice gap there. You should probably leave 1/8 of an inch or so. That's a little more, but it's no big deal. The risk that you're running is that you ruin the pot and you ruin the shelf and you make a whole lot of work. The reward is that you get a little bit more glaze. So you can see that as another pot that has enough glaze taken off the bottom. You can look at this one and you can say, oh, there's no glaze on the bottom, but there is though. See, like that red bit right there, that's glaze, that's on the bottom, that will stick to the shelf. So all of that needs to be cleaned up. So you can take your damp sponge, not take that long, and just kind of go around it. And I should also go up the side a little bit. And everything. Why is it green? It's because this one has wax resist over it, and I'll get into that in a later video. The green is actually a wax that you can brush on. Just like with a little bit of time, you can clean it up nicely. That's enough. I would like a little more probably. It would make me feel better, but that's clean. That can go in the kiln and get fired. You can see this one has a few little strokes, and that's been cleaned up fairly decently. So that looks good. That's how you dip. If you want to pour, you can also hold the pot and pour the glaze over it. You can get streaks that way, but the bottom must be clean. So that is dipping and pouring.